Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and the iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max are now here, and I wanted to walk you through 16 settings you need to know to get the best experience and overall use out of your iPhone 16 Pro or 16 Pro Max. Now, the first obvious change with the latest phones is the new camera capture. This is a new button that's also capacitive as well. Press it once to open the camera, just sort of a full press on the camera button, then lightly half double press to bring up this menu. Slide your finger up and down to switch between the different options. Everything from exposure to depth to zoom to cameras to styles and tone. If you want to select one, maybe we'll go into cameras, half press, and then you can slide back and forth to zoom sort of seamlessly between the cameras. So maybe you're filming something or you just want to snap a photo, press it fully to snap that photo. Half double press again to go back to the main menu. Half press once and you'll go back to where you were. It does take a little bit of time to get used to, but once you do, it has some nice options in it where you can just swipe between what works best for you. If you don't like this button, there's additional options you can choose in your settings. If we go into our settings, scroll down to where we have camera. Under camera, you'll see camera control. This is a new option on the iPhone 16 models, and if we go into this, it gives us a few different options. Light press for a clean preview. You can also launch the camera with a single click or a double click in case you're afraid of actually pressing this while maybe it's in a purse, in your pocket, a bag, or something else. If you don't want it to open the camera, you can have it open other camera apps that might use it, such as Instagram, or you could have it go right to the magnifier or a code scanner. So it's up to you, and if you don't want to use it at all, you can turn it off and it won't function at all. So modify that based on what would work best for you. The next thing I would recommend going in and changing is your photographic style. Now, if you don't care about how the camera actually takes photos, you can leave it alone. But photographic styles allows you to adjust the type of photo you want based on the style you prefer and set it as default. So if you go in and tap Get Started, once you've tapped Get Started, you can select 4 different photos to sort of get an idea of what tone would work best for you. Tap Continue once you've selected those photos, and you'll see I already selected neutral. However, you can select from any of these: cool rose, neutral, rose gold, gold, amber, or standard. You don't have to change this at all. You can leave it as standard, but if you like maybe a different tone, and then you can adjust this slider to make these look best for you. Once you've got that adjusted, tap Continue, and then you have more adjustment here where you can sort of bring back some of the shadow detail or just make it super bright. Save whatever works best for you. Tap Save Tone and Color, and then tap Done. You can always come back later and change this, but you'll see it's now set to default to neutral for photographic styles. If I go back into the camera, now whatever photo I take will automatically have that tone and style applied. So I've taken that. It works best for me, and we can always go in and adjust this afterward by going into settings. You can also use the camera control here, but you can go in and adjust those tones. So you don't have to be stuck with whatever you selected as standard or as sort of default, but you can adjust this later as well to whatever works best for you. Now, with the introduction of iOS 18 on the iPhone 16 models, there's an all-new setting I would recommend adjusting based on your overall usage. Go into your settings, go into battery, and within battery, tap on charging, and we now have a new charge limit slider. This previously was able to be adjusted to 80%. Now we have additional options based on how much we use the phone. Before I changed this, I would probably use the phone for a few days and see how much battery I use throughout the day. If it's down to maybe 50% by the time you go to bed, you may want to drop this down to 80% to preserve your battery health over time. However, if you need the most battery out of it, you could adjust that in between based on your overall usage. Either way, though, I would make sure optimized battery charging is enabled, where that will adapt to you based on how you use your phone and how you charge your phone. Once you have that enabled, then you can sort of preserve your battery health best as you can. If you go back into battery, go to battery health, you again can see your stats. And this year we have our cycle count right in our battery health. They used to have this in the About section, then they changed it a little bit later with iOS 17, and now this is where it is with iOS 18 and iPhone 16. So that gives you an idea. Apple says after about 1,000 cycles, you should be down to about 80% in ideal conditions. So just keep that in mind. If you want to preserve your battery health and you want your phone to last maybe 3 years or so, you may want to adjust those settings. Once you have your first set of settings ready to go, one thing I would recommend is protecting your iPhone with a case from today's sponsor, Taurus. Taurus shares the same vision as iPhone with increasing functionality of the iPhone with their built-in stand. In fact, Taurus was the original creator of the O-shaped stand case. The O-Stand 360 spin case not only has a built-in stand, but the stand is adjustable, allowing for portrait or landscape orientation. The ring on the back is not only a stand, but also MagSafe compatible with Qi 2 wireless chargers and provides as a ring grip as well. Remove that, hold this in your hand, and then you can hang on to it while you're actually holding the phone. The curved back and rounded corners make the case comfortable in the hand, and the grainy, lychee textured body helps to add grip to the overall device. If you happen to drop your phone, the case is designed to provide drop protection at over twice the height of the average adult, over 12 feet. The O-Stand 360 spin case comes in 4 different colors, each offering a different look to match your style preference. Taurus also makes protecting your display easy with their Glasgow screen protector that has a 2-step installation that utilizes a simple snap and pull application. The Glasgow X screen protector also features narrow black borders and 12-foot military-grade protection, along with industry-leading coverage to offer the best possible guard against scratching your brand new iPhone display. Be sure to check out the O-Stand 360 spin case and the Glass X screen protector in the description below. Now, if you've never had an iPhone 14 or an iPhone 15, this feature you may or may not be aware of. There's actually a boot up sound or a sound when you power off the phone. If we turn it off, we'll go into our control center, press and hold the power button, turn it off, and listen to the sound. Now we'll boot it back up. And if you want to enable the boot up sound or disable it, go into your settings, go to accessibility, scroll down to where you have audio and visual. Under audio and visual, you'll see power on and off sounds. Simply turn it off if you don't want it, or enable it if you do want it. Every year, Apple adds more features to the camera. We already talked about the camera control button. This time around, we have additional features and settings in camera settings as well. Under your camera settings, we've already configured the camera control and photographic styles, but there's a few different things I would change here as well. Under record video, your phone can now record in 4K 120 frames per second. That allows for great slow motion at high quality, but it also takes up a lot of room. So I would adjust this based on what you plan to use most. However, this year we can actually change this after we've taken the video as well. So if we maybe take 4K 120 video, we can have it default to this, and we can always change this in our camera settings later. If we go into our camera, if you have it set to 4K 120, all you have to do is go to your video settings, and in the upper right here or top left, depending on how you're holding your phone, tap the option and you can switch between 24, 30, 60, or 120. But if you do capture at 120, you can change it later on. So capture the video, capture that shortly, go into that video once it's done, tap on it. Then we can go to our settings here to edit. Under edit in the upper right, we have a little dial. Under that dial, it then allows us to select between the playback speed that we want. So it's fully configurable afterward, but just be careful because the overall 120 frames per second option can definitely take a lot more storage. And it gives you an example here down at the bottom where it tells you that 740 megabytes with 4K at 120, and that's about every minute or so of video. So keep that in mind if maybe you have a lower storage device. Also under record video, I would scroll down and probably disable HDR video if you don't want to use it. I actually really like HDR video. However, if you don't want it super bright all the time, or maybe you're posting to social media and you don't need that, or maybe it doesn't support it, you can disable it. It's really up to you. If you use an external editor, of course, like Final Cut Pro or other things such as iMovie, you could always change this later on, but I would recommend at least enabling or disabling this based on your overall needs. The other setting at the bottom I would recommend is enabling lock white balance. This will actually lock the white balance or the white color in the scene to what it is when you start recording your video. If you've ever seen those videos when you're taking a video and all of a sudden they'll change, maybe they'll put a phone in front of the camera, or maybe the background changes and sometimes it goes yellow, that's what's causing it. So if you lock this, the scene won't change once you hit record. So get it set up however you'd like within your camera. Once it's set up, hit record and it will stay the way it looks then. Back within our record video settings, if we go to format, there's a couple things to know about here. Typically, if you want to save the most amount of space, I would use high efficiency. Also, photo capture mode, I typically set it to the highest option, 24 megapixels. In addition to that, if we scroll down, I do prefer Pro RAW and resolution control for the highest possible quality. This can be configured after, but under Pro Default, I typically use HEIF Max. This will actually save a lot of space as it uses a newer format. The same is true here with Pro RAW format. We now have JPEG XL lossless or lossy. If you set it to lossless, it's going to be the most compatible, but also use an additional amount of space. You'll see the options down here where it says 75 megabytes for Pro RAW at 48 megapixels. So if you want to use the highest quality you can, typically I recommend leaving this where it is just so that you can get the highest quality photos possible. Back in the main settings of camera, the last things I would recommend enabling are grid and level. These will help you take photos better, where you'll have a level within your camera and then a photo grid to sort of help you frame the photo a little bit better. If we go into our camera settings, you can see these here. I already have them enabled, and we have the grid. It gives you a 9:9 grid that helps you sort of frame things as you're taking photos. Also, we have a level, so if maybe we're off axis here, there is a level here. It's a little bit hard to see, but based on how you're taking the photo, you'll actually see it if you're trying to take it this way. So this is what it looks like as you're trying to take a photo. You've got a little level there, and then it sort of goes to white as it sort of centers itself. So I would highly recommend that. Another setting I would recommend within the camera itself is tap the arrow here on the left. You'll get additional options. By default, we have this set to 4:3. 4:3 is fine for most photos, but I typically use 16:9 if you're going to post on social media or you want widescreen photos. So if maybe you're making a thumbnail for YouTube, this is an ideal size for that. But if you don't want that, of course, you can adjust that however you'd like. But either way, I would recommend that. If you want to get into other settings such as RAW that I mentioned earlier, you'll see it says HEIF Max. Tap on it, it will enable, press and hold on it, and you can go through different options such as using RAW photos or HEIF Max, or change it to whatever works best for you. It's a quick way to access your settings. Again, you have the new tone options, and you can change all of that here now. Another thing I would highly recommend enabling has to do with a feature added in iOS 18. Go into your settings, go all the way to the bottom, go to Apps, then go to M for Messages, and within Messages, scroll down until you see RCS messaging. This makes it much better when you're actually messaging someone that's using an Android phone, whether that's in groups or just seeing information being sent back and forth. If we go into RCS messaging, we can enable this, and then we can utilize things we've had in iMessage for a while, such as read or read receipts, as well as just knowing when someone's texting you. All of those features are available now if you're using RCS and you're texting someone that's not using an iPhone with Messages. Now, something we've had on the Pro phones for a couple years is an always-on display. I would recommend customizing this based on how you want to use it. So you'll see here I don't show the wallpaper in the background, but I just have a black display with the time, the date, and then the actual focus mode that I'm in. If you want to adjust this and maybe show your wallpaper or turn it off entirely, you can. It turns out it doesn't use a whole lot of power, but if you want to disable that, you can go back into your settings. Under Settings, go to Display and Brightness, scroll down, and you'll actually see Always On Display. Within Always On Display, we have a couple different options. We can show the wallpaper, as I mentioned before. So when the Always On Display is on, you'll have your wallpaper in the background, or you can turn that off. You can turn off notifications or turn it off entirely so that it's just a completely dark display once you turn off your phone. Again, it doesn't use a whole lot of power, but if you want to save every little ounce of power, configure this based on your overall needs. So I typically want my notifications and the always-on display. Also, something else worth configuring that I really like on these phones has to do with when it's actually sort of in a sleeping mode where you're using a feature called Standby. Again, in your settings, if we go into Standby, we can enable this or disable this based on what we want. For example, my wife doesn't typically like this as it keeps her awake. So what it means is if your phone is charging, so maybe it's charging here, and it's just sort of in a static position, landscape at night when it's locked and charging, give it a second, and it goes into a standby mode. This standby mode, we can unlock and get photos, or we can have a clock that we can swipe through, press and hold, and we can customize it and change the colors based on whatever we want. So if we want it maybe this way, or maybe we want a different type of clock or something else, we can fully customize this. But if you don't want this at all, well, then you can turn it off. So if you want to turn it off, just go into your settings under standby, turn it off entirely. But again, you can customize this, and I would recommend looking at this to see if you want it to show notifications when in that mode, Or on the display, you can have it never turn off, automatically turn off, or after 20 seconds. I like it set to never so that it's sort of an alarm clock or time clock that I can just look at on my nightstand at night. So I would recommend going into this and taking a look at what works best for you. Haptics on iPhone have always been great. In fact, they've gotten better over the years with the Taptic Engine. That's sort of the feedback you get with a slight vibration when you press on something. However, we can improve this a little bit if you miss the feeling of 3D touch. When you press and hold on an icon, it will sort of give you a sub-menu of things you can jump right into. So if you want to change this and make it a little bit better, we can do that. If we go under Accessibility, then we go down to Touch. Under Touch, we have Haptic Touch, and now we have the option for touch duration. I recommend changing this to fast. It makes it feel much more like 3D touch, and you can test it here. By default, it's a little bit slow and sort of sluggish. If you don't like it, of course, you could change it to slow, but I like the feeling of this where it sort of just pops right open really fast like 3D touch used to. Now, of course, if you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description free like I always do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.